So, The Killer is the latest movie by director David Fincher, starring Michael Fassbender, and it is basically a hitman movie and also some revenge elements as well. And this is a movie that I was really looking forward to. So, I definitely wanted to discuss this because I feel for people who really enjoy these types of movies, they're probably going to see something different. So let me start off with a little bit of background on this movie. This is based upon a French novel, okay, the complete Killer series, but I think it's called Mats in France. But this is based upon a graphic novel. And as a matter of fact, the story on this, or the movie itself, was actually started in 2007 to adapt this graphic novel, which leads to the thing that I really did love about this movie. And it's something that I really want to highlight. And that is the director, David Fincher. David Fincher, the last time he made a movie on Netflix was Mank. And I don't know if he produced another movie after that, but he is one of the greatest directors out there. I really love David Fincher, and he's produced some of the best movies that I've ever seen. And as a matter of fact, some of my top movies, The Fight Club. I absolutely love Fight Club. I think everybody has seen this movie, and I think a lot of praise that has been put on this movie is very well worth it. And I can't say enough about Fight Club. And then the other movie, which led me to David Fincher in the first place, is Seven. And this movie, The Killer, is created with basically most of the same team, meaning that obviously David Fincher directs it, but the audio, the music is done by Trent Reznor, and the screenplay is actually done by the same person who did Seven. And so that brings me back to The Killer. And that brings a lot of things that I was hoping would be in this movie, meaning that a lot of elements from Seven or Fight Club would carry over in here. And that is the first thing that I love about this film. It's David Fincher and everybody else involved. And the second thing is Michael Fassbender. He does an absolutely incredible job in this movie. And a lot of this movie is inner monologue where he's talking to himself about what he's going to do, what he's doing. And Michael Fassbender, he actually leads this entire movie. Other actors in this movie like Tilda Swinton is in there as well, but it is Michael's show and he just does an amazing job. And so those are the first two things: the director, everybody involved with it, Michael Fassbender, and then the actual story itself. So this is where, things are different, because we've seen so many of these hitman movies before done over and over. And I think for a lot of people, they might be thinking, okay, this is just another one of those. But when you're watching this, it's not about that, and that's something that I'll talk a little bit about later in terms of how, this might, divide some people in some cases. And in this case, it's really not about the action part of it. And as a matter of fact, if you just saw a brief clip of that trailer, that is pretty much where the action is. And the rest of the movie is really about this assassin, this killer, what's going on in his mind, how he thinks about things, and how it's very mundane. It's a job at the end of the day. And so that's where the story takes a different turn. And this is something that I don't think I have seen in other hitman related movies, and it's different. And whenever you're watching this, I think the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes of the film, it shows the killer. It doesn't have a name, I don't recall, but it really talks about him doing his job, the process that he goes through, the rules that he follows. And that is something that's woven out through the entire movie. There's rules to this game, being a killer. And that really sets up this entire character. And in a lot of ways, it sets up the movie, because this is something that is prevalent throughout the entire movie. And it doesn't really deviate from that, even though a lot of things change, settings change. You go through this journey with the killer, but it really maintains that. And I really appreciated the fact that David Fincher respects the audience. This is not one of those movies, which like most modern movies, where they actually do this huge explanation dump, of the entire plot, what the characters are thinking, and all this other stuff. It really goes back to David Fincher's style, where he really gives the audience, he has confidence that they could learn and figure things out. And I appreciated that so much because it tells you a lot about this character in just the first 15 minutes and also this world without saying a lot about who this character is. Okay, so that is also expertly handled. And then the other thing is, it's just the overall technical quality. We know that with David Fincher, the screenwriter, cinematographers, sound, color grading, costume set design, everything else, you know, is going to be top notch because David Fincher is a master and the rest of the people that are involved are highly, highly skilled people. And so if you enjoy that part of it, you're not going to be disappointed. And so from this review, you could probably tell I really, really did enjoy this film. But let's go ahead and get to the negatives of this film, because if you are expecting a fast-paced action film, hitman assassin type movie, that's really not what this is. And that's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. There could definitely be a divide in this. It's very slow paced, very methodical, and it's very similar to the character of this movie because he is slow, methodical, and the movie follows that to the T. And so if you were expecting one of those action heavy movies, this is not it. And I could easily see where for a lot of people, especially those who don't really like, watching these type of slower paced movies, I think they will be put off by that. And that to me is about the only potential negative. For me, it didn't bother me because I loved everything else, the execution, the story, the characters, just everything about this movie really, I would say, makes you appreciate not only what has been done here, but also the different approach and how it really makes you pay attention to this killer. And that is something that I think is hard to do, especially in modern films. And so those are my thoughts on the killer. I really, really did enjoy this. Even if you are not a fan of David Fincher, which I think that might be a rarity or an exception, I would say watch this movie and just enjoy it. And then this is one of those movies where I think, obviously I wouldn't say it's nowhere near as great as his other movies, especially the movies that I mentioned a little bit earlier. It is still a really, really good movie. And it could be one of those movies that kind of makes you think about the characters, the story, and this whole world of hitman assassins a little bit more than you would in other movies.